Welcome, and thank you so much for tuning in to the special guest artist recital. It's my pleasure to have two great friends in town, Fiona Gillespie, soprano, and Paul Morton, plucker. And we're going to open this program with two songs by the great, very earliest Baroque composer, Giulio Caccini.
These two songs, Giulio Caccini was one of the first composers who was writing in this revolutionary new style that came pretty much right on the dot of 1600 in Florence. And the mood of this time in poetry and in art was all about contrasts. The best thing I always tell people to think of when they're listening to this music is a Caravaggio painting. These really dark, shadowy places in contrast with these really yellowy, illuminated, brilliant things. This first song captures that so perfectly. The whole text, which of course is in Italian, a brief overview of it is just think of every sort of opposite descriptive thing that you can. So war and peace and light and dark and death and birth. It's a tormented love song, but this guy, the poet who wrote it, presumably a male, doesn't seem to be able to figure out how he feels, and he loves the difficulty of that. He's not at odds with the torment of feelings that he's having. And the second piece is probably one of the most famous and beloved to come out of the Italian Baroque period. Some of you might recognize it, Amarilli mia bella. It's the first in the Italian book of 24 songs and arias for you voice students out there. You should all sing it if you have the chance. So this is Non al ciel co tanti lumi, the first song. Non al ciel co tanti lumi, tanti stelle, mari e fiumi, non apri giri viole, tanti raggi non del sole, quanta noi bendo agnora, cor gentil che si innamora, quanta noi bendo agnora, cor gentil che si innamora, cor gentil che si innamora. Pena il lungo e gioir corto, morir vivo e viver morto, spemicetta desire, merci poca gran languire, falsi risi, veri pianti, e la vita degli amanti, falsi risi, veri pianti, e la vita degli amanti, e la vita degli amanti. Neve al sole, nebbia al vento, e l'amore gioia e contento, degli affanni delle pene, ai che fingia mai non viene, c'è di morte estingue ardore, chi non ama accende amore, c'è di morte estingue ardore, chi non ama accende amore, chi non ama accende amore. Penso io che il cuore solo può dar fine al mio branduolo, vedi voi già miro io, del mio stato acerbo il rio, sol amor tiranno accuso, occhi belli e non escluso, occhi belli amando accuso, occhi belli e non escluso, occhi belli
So first, a warm welcome to the lovely Caitlin Hedge on fiddle. We are 4 members of the 8-member band Macaris, focused on classical and Baroque Scottish music. And we last got together in January for a CD recording project of 18th century music that was bizarrely attributed to the 16th century Secretary to Mary, Queen of Scots, named David Rizzio. And we have no idea how this music came to be attributed to Rizzio, but we did a whole recording of music that came to be associated with his name. And we're gonna now play a set of 3 of these tunes. First, Down the Burn Davie, which shows up in a collection called Orpheus Caledonius in 1725, and incorporating a little variation by the composer Joshua Campbell. And from there, And Thou Were My Ain Thing, with a little variation by a guy named Peacock. And finally, an instrumental called The Yellow-Haired Laddie, arranged by Burke Thumoth.
When trees did bud and fields were green, and broom bloomed fair to see, when Mary was complete 16, and love laughed in her e'en, blithe Davie's wings her heart did move to speak her
first got to work with Fiona on a project I organized a couple of years ago of continental arrangements from the classical era of Scottish folk songs. There was this enterprising Edinburgh publisher who started commissioning the great composers of his time. And Haydn wrote about 400 folk songs in English. He took them, these classic songs, and he arranged them for an instrumentation of usually violin and cello and keyboard. The earliest of these didn't specify the instrumentation at all, and there was simply a figured bass. It's easy to forget that Haydn was still writing in a time that musicians were reading off a figured bass. So this set's going to open and close with two of these Haydn Scottish folk songs. And in between, two tunes by the Scottish composer based in London named James Oswald, who was one of those responsible for perpetuating this myth that David Rizzio had written a bunch of great classic Scottish folk songs.
I do confess, though say fair, I would be logs in love, had I not found the slightest prayer that lips could speak, thy heart could move. I do
gamesome as they. Then home they returned, but returned most unkind. For Jockey rode on and left Moggy behind. For Jockey rode on and left Moggy behind. Surprised at this treatment, she cried, "Gaffer Jock, pray what is the reason that Moggy you mock?" Quoth he, "Goose, come on, now you are my bride." And when folk are wed, they set fooling aside. And when folk are wed, they set fooling aside. He took home his Moggy, good conduct to learn, who brushed up the house while he thatched the old barn. They laid in their stock for the cure that ensue. And now live as man and wife usually do. And now live as man and wife usually do. smile
Okay, thank you so much, Kivie, for having us out. It's been really fun. I just want to say a quick word about the instruments that I'm playing. This is a theorbo from around the time of about 1607 in Rome. And I was also playing a Baroque guitar, which is the guitar as it was in about 1735 in Italy. And also coming up, I'll sneak a banjo in, which is a bit more modern, but
A bit more?
it all kind of relates to this upcoming ballad that we're doing. Do you want to say
Yeah.
a bit about the ballad?
Yeah, also maybe the lirone.
Oh, yeah, and I should also give a shout out to Kivie's awesome lirone, which is like a 17th century vacuum cleaner that can play any chord.
Yeah, only plays in chords,
Pleasure.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not to mention his gamba and his cello. Yeah.
Earlier,
And,
you saw Viola d'amore, the viola of love.
Yeah. Okay, so our last set here is more in the vein of folk music. The first one is a ballad that I wrote about a series of murders that happened in Edinburgh in the 1800s. There was such a demand from the Doctors' College at the time for bodies to dissect, to learn about human anatomy on, but they were really hard to come by, and people began body snatching. And then these two men hit upon the idea of killing guests at their very seedy tenement-style lodging house, who they didn't think would be missed, and began selling the bodies to the doctors. And these doctors didn't ask any questions because they needed this material. Anyway, it culminated in a giant lawsuit, one of the biggest of the century, and that brought up a lot of attention. And actually, the laws were passed after that bodies were able to be donated to science. And so this ballad is written in advocacy of laws keeping up with the advance of science. And after that, we have two more traditional ballads, one from the American tradition, which Paul's going to play the banjo on. That's William and Margaret. A longer title, Fair William and Sweet Margaret, comes from a huge family of ballads going back 400 or 500 years that have variants in England and Scotland and Ireland, and maybe even potentially Scandinavia. They've related some of these too. But you'll hear our version is quite Appalachian sounding. And the last song we're doing is an old Scottish and English ballad called Willie's Lady. And it tells the story of, again, very old and really fantastical and supernatural in this case. King Willie brings home a wife who his mother, who's a sorceress, disapproves of, and she puts a curse on her that she will lay 9 months pregnant and unable to give birth to this child. And the two of them have to devise a way to figure out what all of the things that the queen wove into his wife's being and underneath of her bed, sort of like evil talismans. They have to undo all of this stuff. That one's really texty, so that's kind of an overview for you so you know what's going on in Willie's Lady, our final number. So this is the Anatomist's Act that we'll start with.
Listen, companions, come lend your ears for the story of two men, one dark and one fair. Although they were lured to dark deeds that appear, when the gap between science and doctrine lies bare. It was common on winter in Edinburgh town. The lights in the lodging house were faltering low, when poor swollen Donald was found on the floor, with a debt on his soul of 4 pounds he still owed. It's 4 pound he owes me, here said to his friend. It's 4 pound and beyond his spirit a box. His soul may face turned to the wall, her face turned to the wall. King Willie sailed over the raging foam. He wooed a wife and he brought her home. He wooed her for her long and golden hair, his mother at her almighty care. A weary spell she's laid on her, she be with child for long and many a year, but the child she would never bear, and in her bower she lies in pain. King Willie at her bed, and he do stand and salt and tears down his cheeks to run. King Willie back to his mother he did run, and he's there as a begging son. Says my true love has fine and noble steed, the likes of which you never did see. And every part of this horse is made, is hanging 50 silver bells and 10, is hanging 50 bells and 10. This goodly gift shall be your own, if back to my own true love you'll turn again, that she might bear her baby son. Oh, of a child she'll never light her be, nor all the sickness will she ever be free. But she will die, and she will turn to clay, and you will wed another maid. Then sighing said this weary man, as back to his own true love he turned again, and I wish my life were at an end. Then sighing said this weary man, and back to his own true love he turned again, and I wish my life were at an end. Go down to the marketplace, and you must buy a loaf of wax, and you must shape as a babe to nurse, and you must make 2 eyes all out of glass, and you must make it real to pass, and ask your mother to the christening day, and you must stand there close as you can be, and you must hear what she do say. King Willie gazed on down to the marketplace, and he has bought him a loaf of wax, and he has shaped it as a babe to nurse, and he has made 2 eyes of glass. He has his mother to the christening day, and he has stood there close as he could be, that he might hear what she did say. And how he spat and how she swore, she spied a babe where no babe could be before, she spied a babe where none could be before. Says who was it who undid the 9 which knots, braided in amongst this lady's locks? And who was it who took out the combs of care, braided in amongst this lady's hair? And who was it to the master kid that ran and slept all beneath this lady's bed, that ran and slept all beneath her bed? And who was it that stirred the shoe? And who was it that let her lighter be, that she might bear her baby boy? And it was Willie who undid the 9 which knots, braided in amongst this lady's locks. And it was Willie who took out the combs of care, braided in amongst this lady's